Dr. Jeevan Singh is a queer Punjabi-Ecuadorian-Puerto Rican mother, poet, doctor of traditional East Asian medicine, and mindfulness-based somatic practitioner. Her work locates itself at the intersections of politicized somatics, earth-based medicines, integrative mental health, and the world of the womb and pelvic bowl. She is honored to support her clients and communities in their movement toward their embodiment, towards reclaiming pleasure and deep rest, toward cultivating radical self compassion and body friendship. Ooh, what a great term. And remembering that our healing is healing for the collective. When not offering one on one sessions or group offerings, Jeevan can be found in her kitchen having spontaneous dance parties with her young toddler and partner, cooking ancestral foods, journaling, dreaming into her next herb and flower garden, and feeling so ready for new travels to come. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Josie.
Absolutely. Such an honor. I love that we're both Pisces acupuncturists.
Right? I love that.
What are the odds? Queer Pisces acupuncturist.
hmm There must be like a group. We can start like a Facebook group
Yeah,
of
yeah,
queer
exactly.
Pisces acupuncturists.
Yeah. I love it. So, what is the story that led you to do the work that you do today as a doctor of East Asian medicine? And how does somatic womb work and mindfulness fit into that?
Yeah. It really started with my Saturn return, since we're talking about astrology.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't find out until later that my Saturn is in the eighth house, which is
Mm.
apparently the house of sex and death. It's related to Scorpio energy. And that was my late 20s. It was
Wow.
just, yeah, I
Hmm.
had a series of pretty traumatic events happen from getting held up at gunpoint twice
What? Oh my gosh.
to a rollover accident.
Oh,
Yeah, in a car,
wow.
all within the span of 2 years, like
Wow.
exactly in that Saturn return time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was um, just such a rich time
Mhm.
of really getting real with myself and with life and the preciousness of life
Mhm.
and asking myself, like, who am I
Yeah.
and what do I actually want to be doing?
Right.
What do I actually want to
Yeah.
spend this lifetime doing?
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
I was on track to doing like an MFA in creative writing. I
Oh.
had a degree in English and I taught high school for a little while. Very quickly learning that I don't do well in institutional settings.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had always said that if I had a second lifetime, I would pursue natural medicine.
Mm, mhm.
And that's what I did. I went to school, actually at a naturopathic college that also has a Chinese medicine program.
Oh, cool.
Um, and I chose Chinese medicine because it felt, compared to naturopathy, it felt really familiar to me as a person of South Asian ancestry.
Mm, mhm. Right.
And I really resonated with this, yeah, traditional indigenous medicine of East Asia.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so I went and did a doctorate in East Asian medicine. And while I was in school, I started a practice in body work. So
Mhm.
I was like in my second year of school, I started my body work practice. I already knew I wanted to specialize in womb work.
Mhm.
And here I was doing these sessions with clients, and they were having really big emotional cathartic releases on the table.
Mm, mhm.
And I did not know what to do with it.
Right. Yeah.
Back then, like, say the word trauma, and I was like not interested. I was like, I like didn't know anything about trauma. I didn't know how to hold space for big emotions. I didn't feel proficient in it. I was
Mhm.
just kind of like diving into the deep end with people and didn't really feel like I had the skills.
Mhm.
So they started that same year a mental health program at my school, which is based in mindfulness-based psychotherapeutic principles and a modality called the Hakomi method.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I've been studying that for the last 8 years and got a degree in integrative mental health. And so those two pieces really inform my work.
Nice. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, one of my best friends practices that method as well. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard such good things about it. And not to keep drawing parallels between us, but I was also an English major.
What? I love that.
That's funny. Yeah, creative writing I majored in. That's so funny.
It makes sense, right? Like ancient Chinese medicine doctors were poets, like scholars and poets.
Right? I know. That's what I have felt with studying Chinese medicine is that it's so deeply poetic and beautiful and like it's just so rich with yeah, it just felt inspiring to study and I always felt like writing like it was inspiring my creativity that this medicine.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's probably a disproportionate amount of Pisces in this field.
Us feeling people.
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's awesome. Cool. Let's see. And then, will you expand on what somatic womb work is? What is that?
I feel like I ask myself this often, my own self, because it's a term that I made up like
Okay.
a few years ago.
Yeah.
My dear friend Renee Sills runs Embodied Astrology.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, and they're also this like magical queer person who does
Ooh.
embodiment work
Oh my
and
gosh.
as that intersects with astrology.
Oh my gosh. I want to know more about that too.
Yes, Renee is incredible. And I got a chance to be on their podcast, and I needed a term to encapsulate the work that I was doing that really pulled from somatics and mindfulness and
Mhm.
East Asian medicine and the pelvic bowl. Um, that somatic womb work was what I landed on
Nice.
after trying on many different words.
Mhm.
So, somatic womb work to me is a way of approaching the womb, a way of approaching the pelvic bowl that really takes in the whole person.
Mhm.
Yeah, really holds the layers, the multiple truths and layers of experience
Mm,
that
mhm.
might be living within our pelvic bowls and wombs. And so, what I mean by this is that in somatics, we believe and understand that all of our life experiences have happened through our bodies.
Mm,
It's not a separate process.
mhm.
And so our thoughts happen through our bodies, our beliefs, our emotions, how we relate to the world, to each other, to ourselves.
Mhm.
And I would go so far as to even saying ancestral memories
Yeah,
live in our bodies,
for sure.
right?
Mhm.
And so taking that lens and applying it to a specific place in the body, the pelvic bowl, what happens when we approach our wombs, understanding that there may be beliefs and memory and emotion and unprocessed energies that we're holding here. Um,
Totally.
how do we relate differently than to ourselves?
Yeah. So it's almost like the pelvic bowl or the womb is its own entity or its own soma.
Yes, totally. Like
Yeah.
a microsoma.
Yeah. Yeah. Soma within a soma. Yeah.
Totally. And
Interesting.
looking through like the chakra system,
Mhm.
There, this is, and through Chinese medicine, like both traditional systems of medicine say that this is the root, this is the base, the foundation of our body, of our energy body. And so it
Right.
feels like a foundational, fundamental place to be holding with people.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I love that. That makes so much sense. You talk a lot about grief and pleasure, which I love. What do you think these two energies have in common, and how do they show up in the body, and or in your work? And do you think they're connected to each other?
Yeah, I absolutely see them not only as connected, but as inseparable as spring and autumn.
Wow.
Yeah, so as an acupuncturist yourself, I feel like one of the many gifts of East Asian medicine is returning us, inviting us back into the seat of the web of life,
Mhm.
which is that we can't not be connected. Like we were, that is our birthright as we were
Mhm.
born into this world and into this body and life to be in connection with everyone and everything around us. And the seasons and five element wheel of Chinese medicine is such a beautiful illustration of that, that
Mhm.
we cannot have winter without autumn. We cannot have spring without winter. There
Mhm.
is no summer without spring, and it goes around, and they all support one another.
Mhm.
And so through that lens, grief is associated with autumn. And if we look to the other side of autumn, if we kind of look, yeah, across the seasons to the other side, we have spring and this
Mm.
new life emerging, and these ancient Chinese medicine texts telling us to walk through the courtyard with our hair down and be soft like flowers. And I can't think of anything more pleasurable than like those first warm breezes of spring and the flowers
Mm.
blooming. And so I
Totally.
don't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like a little baby, like, oh, there's so much like pleasure in holding this like new life, this
Right.
suppleness of new life.
Mhm.
So I see grief and pleasure existing on this wheel
Hmm.
of the seasons.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that our capacity to hold one expands our capacity to hold the other.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, totally.
To really be with our grief, to really like really allow ourselves to carve out space for the grief
Mhm.
means that there's space, more space for the pleasure too.
Right. Yeah. That's so interesting. I've never thought about that before with how they um, kind of overlaying that, transition of the seasons over that and that connection. I was thinking about too how summer is, related to joy and how that goes into fall, which is grief. And it's like, oh, that actually makes sense. I think joy and pleasure can also kind of be connected in that way. So it's like, yeah, it can, like having that joy means that there's always going to be that shadow of grief, that possibility of grief there, or having that pleasure. Yeah, it's so connected. You're right. It's all like you can't have one without the other.
Totally. Yeah, there's a beautiful book about grief called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. Have you heard of it?
No, I love that title.
Oh, it's like one long poem. It's so beautiful. I think you would
Wow.
love it.
Yes.
And yeah, the first opening pages, the author talks about exactly this, that grief and love are like two sides of the same thing,
Right.
that
Interesting.
we grieve because we love.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. That's interesting. What is the name of that book so folks can write it down?
It's called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And I can't
Okay.
remember the author's name.
The Wild Edge of Sorrow. I love that. Ugh, what a great title. That's so interesting, and I've never really contemplated the relationship of grief to pleasure, so that's an interesting kind of twist on the because besides the grief and love connection, there is that grief and pleasure connection as well. Yeah.
And I'm even thinking about like orgasms, right?
Yeah,
And like the way
right,
that like heaving orgasmic quality is like really crying and the way that your
right.
diaphragm moves. And then during an orgasm, like the pelvic floor and the diaphragm and the way that they're like there's like that quaking, right?
Yeah,
That is a different kind of, yeah, that's like pleasure and grief might have kind of parallel experiences in the body. And
totally. And sometimes an orgasm can, like, lead to crying. Is that what like
totally.
yeah, it's like it can access that grief in a whole different way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So, what are some things folks can do to increase their fertility from the perspective of a somatic womb practice?
Yeah. Some of the tangible things that I do with clients who are wanting to increase fertility are things like castor oil packed over the womb, um, steaming, pelvic steaming together as ritual, kind of like fertility
Mm,
ritual, but also as this very tangible, supportive practice for womb health.
mhm,
And self massage. And I
mm,
guess what makes all of that somatic and not just womb work is really getting to slow down and tune into the body and be receptive to the stories that the
mm,
body might share as we're doing these practices.
interesting. And how what would that look like if your body was sharing a story, what would that look like or what would you do?
Yeah. So it happens a lot, right? Like maybe I'll have my hands over somebody's womb if we're just like holding their womb, and I'll just guide them into some mindful awareness, and they'll start to notice, oh, there's some, I don't know, like clenching happening in my shoulders right now. And so we just
Mm,
stay with that.
mhm,
And then it turns into a story of like, oh, I'm carrying so much. Like, I feel this weight on my shoulders. Not just that, this is my mother's weight. This is how my mother carries too much.
wow, yeah,
Which brings me back to this other piece of somatic womb work being inherently relational,
mm,
because our first relationships were in the womb.
right,
Right? Our very first relationship, like so intimate to be in somebody's body, like
right,
holy moly, like
yeah,
whether or not that's a person who raises us, like that's a relationship that happens
for
in
sure,
utero.
yeah,
And um so yeah, that's the kind of thing that can sometimes unfold as we're working together.
mhm,
And I guess I'll just add really quick, my practice has really taken a turn since my own birth of my child, um, into trauma healing
mm,
more than it ever has before. It's always been trauma informed, and now it's really going towards trauma resolution work.
oh, wow,
And so when we work with the body in this way of slowing down and getting mindful and tuning into the nervous system,
mhm,
things just start to emerge
hmm,
that our cognitive minds might not be aware of, but
right,
our bodies remember,
right,
right? So
mhm,
like I've had sessions where suddenly I'm like back on the operating table of the C-section that I had, and it's like, oh, my body, I'm feeling my legs freeze, and my body wants to move through this experience so that
wow,
it can have some resolution.
right,
And so I would say like really my practice has really been going in this direction of trauma healing. And
mhm,
it's something that's very mysterious in the sense that we can't anticipate what's going to happen until we're doing it,
right,
but also so profound and necessary.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love this extra level of looking at womb work and womb healing through not just doing the practices of the castor oil pack and the self massage and but really paying attention to what stories come up in your body and what sensations are happening and why and what your body is trying to communicate. Is that
Absolutely. And the big difference here is that instead of me like asking your mind,
Mhm.
like, what do you think this is about? Because the mind will come up with all sorts of stories that may or may not be relevant.
Right.
By slowing the process down, which grief and pleasure ask us to slow down to
Hmm.
be with them,
Interesting.
right? Like by slowing down together, we can actually start to get under the surface of our conscious awareness
Hmm.
into some of what is actually happening in the body, because the body don't lie. We
Right.
know that, right? Like when we go to the body, it's a very direct storyteller.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And how do you do that? Like, I feel like I would wanna intellectualize it so quickly, like, that's hard to do.
Totally, that's part of the skill. And
Yeah.
that is really, again, why, like, in the beginning, the first half of my practice, I was using a lot of mindfulness
Mhm.
and realized that with so many of my clients, especially my clients of color, that it was really hard to
Yeah.
get mindful because getting mindful, feeling your body means also potentially feeling the chronic pain that's here,
Right.
the emotional pain, the pain of being a body impacted by racism and ancestral trauma.
Mhm.
And so it's not easy
Right.
work.
Yeah.
Um, but so much of my work right now is just bridging, like helping create that bridge together between self and this kind of embodied awareness.
Mhm.
And I have clients that can, like, that's what's so incredible, Josie, is like, yeah, even right now, like 3 months of working together, and also clients I've had for years who weren't able to feel below their neck,
Right.
who can now feel themselves.
Wow.
And now that they can feel themselves, we can start to dip into these kind of deeper layers of what
Right.
the story the body's ready to share.
Wow. This is so wild. I was just talking about this concept with my guest from the last episode with Umu. And we were talking about that, how some folks can't feel from below the neck, like the neck down. Yeah.
Exactly. So many people.
Yeah. It's quite common.
I would say like 70% of the people that come in to see me, that
What did you say? 70%?
yeah, like 70%.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, either have trouble accessing or have trouble staying.
Staying
Because
there.
none of us, most of us were not taught how to listen to our bodies or feel our bodies. In fact, quite the opposite.
Totally quite the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
nope, the mind, like, yeah, it's like there's a hierarchy of the mind over the
Right.
heart and the body.
Right. Totally. Yeah, we have to relearn how to integrate our entire whole self, our whole being into who we are and what we're going to do and listen to the communication that our body's offering and all of that. Yeah.
Yes, I remember watching my child when they were just like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months old, and the
Mhm.
way that their emotions expressed through their whole body.
Wow, yeah.
So they'd get excited and like kick their arms and legs out and
Right.
laugh or something. And I don't know, at some point, I even see it now at 2 years old, there's like this process that starts to happen of like containing a little bit more.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
And now with so many people kind of recognizing their own neurodivergence, I feel like there's a big like unmasking process happening collectively
Mm-hmm.
or maybe people get to regain some of this relationship with their body without um, shaming around it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. There's like more of a movement around that, like especially in like disability justice communities and yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah, it is so beautiful and so important. Because yeah, we get so conditioned from so early to leave our bodies, or sometimes it's like a necessity for us to survive in order to yeah.
Totally. That's exactly right. And I really try to frame it that way for my clients of like
Mm-hmm.
your body did exactly what it needed
Right.
to keep you safe,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And now we get to kind of update it a little bit to start to work through some of what might have happened.
Right. Right. Totally. Ugh, what powerful work you do. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. I love it.
I can tell. I can tell. Are you able to offer anything virtually for folks for you to like walk through folks doing things to themselves, or does it need to be in person?
Yeah, I do both virtual and in-person work.
Oh, cool.
And it's a little different virtually because my
Mhm.
hands aren't there. So it's really utilizing a person's own hands,
Right.
which can actually be huge with
Yeah,
like practicing consent of
totally.
like just even with your own hands of asking, is this okay if I put my hands here?
Yes, I love that. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's great because I'm sure some folks listening are thinking, "How can I do this and work with you and experience this kind of approach to healing?" That's
Yeah, and
awesome.
something that you and even your audience might be interested in is another book named Tao of Trauma by
Okay.
Elaine Duncan, who is a long time, she studied somatic experiencing for decades and is also an acupuncturist
Oh,
who
cool.
has worked doing trauma healing through Chinese medicine for decades.
Oh, amazing.
And I am really like leaning on that work so heavily right now. And it's essentially like, yeah, it's trauma healing somatic work
Oh,
that is
cool.
really powerful. And yeah, the book alone is like so beautiful.
Nice. And say that is it the Tao of what is it?
The Tao of Trauma by Elaine Duncan.
Yes. Oh, that sounds amazing, and I wanna check that out because I feel like a lot of, more mainstream trauma resources are mostly written from the perspective of cis white men. So, yeah, I'm always searching and looking for other yeah, so that sounds great. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you be willing to share the story of your fertility journey, especially like as a queer person of the global majority? And is there anything that you wish you would have known going into it, or is there anything that you would do differently in the future?
Wow, I love this question. And yeah, I would love to share a little bit about our journey. So I met my partner 9 years ago, and in very clear fashion, a week into our relationship, they were like, "Let's have babies."
I
I
love
was
it.
like, "Slow it down." And meanwhile, all of our straight friends like you hauled, and we waited a year, which felt like a long time to move in together.
That is a long time. Yes.
We're really taking our time.
Yeah.
Um, so I was in grad school for what felt like forever, and kept saying, when I'm done with school, then we can try for a baby. And during that time, we actually approached one of my partner's family members. My partner is Cambodian and Southeast Asian, and one of their family members agreed to be our donor.
Wow. That's
That was
amazing.
so amazing to
Yeah.
be able to have that option. And so school ended, and I started really doing my fertility prep, seeing the
Mhm.
naturopath, going to acupuncture, getting on herbal formulas. And as I was deep in this process, um, we got this like donor's sperm tested and stuff. We were just like 2 months away from starting.
Mhm.
He dropped the bomb that he couldn't do it anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his partner, they're a straight couple,
Mhm.
felt um, it just didn't feel right for her.
Got it.
And
Oh,
that was so heartbreaking.
I bet. I bet.
Oh, it's
Wow.
just, yeah, that was so hard. And,
Yeah.
there's not, we don't know that many like Southeast Asian people with sperm. There's slim pickings when
Totally.
you are a person of the global majority looking at sperm banks,
Yep. Yep.
right? And that
Mhm.
felt really important to us. And especially to me as a mixed race person, I was like, oh, I want our child to really have this direct like connection to their cultural
Totally.
lineage. And
Yeah.
um, so then it took about 6 months, and we found our second donor, who was just this like beautiful gay man.
Ooh.
And he was Southeast Asian. He was part Black and Japanese. So
Mhm.
we're like, okay, Asian, close enough. Like going out like further and further. Like, okay, well, you're part Asian. That's cool. And you're also
Right.
like beautiful and magical and witchy and really young.
Oh,
And
nice.
he was like totally on board, and we were all so excited.
Mhm.
And he had just moved to New York City from Portland. And the yeah, he was supposed to fly out so we could get started. And that was March of 2020.
No.
So
Oh
you
my
can imagine
God. Right.
that all the flights were canceled because pandemic
Right.
was started that month, and
Mhm.
there is no way to get to one another.
Ah, dang.
Oh, so
Wow.
big loss again. And we tried the shipping the sperm.
Mhm.
That did not work. In
Mhm.
fact, side note, we have a friend, queer friends, who got that ship sperm analyzed, and it was like totally not alive anymore. So I don't know that
Really?
the shipping works from that far away. Maybe if you're on the same coast. I don't know. So
Right. Wow. Ugh.
another 6 months goes by, and that donor, we're getting close, and we're like, well, we'll fly to you so you don't have to come out here. It's in the late summer of 2020, and he was just going through such a hard time
Mm.
that he couldn't be our donor. And
Right.
that felt like, yeah, such a huge loss.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we're just like, oh my gosh, who do we even ask?
Right.
And in the fall of 2020, in the midst of these really intense wildfires here in Oregon and all across the West Coast,
Mhm.
my partner thought of like a friend that they had who is just like a really special person. He is Indigenous Mexican and an activist and an artist. And I guess we hadn't really thought about him because he's not Asian.
Mm. Mhm.
But yeah, it took my partner asked him, and we're very open about our donor. And he said yes. He was like, yes, I'll be your donor. And we're like, okay, well, we have somebody in Portland who we both respect, who just is like a really special human being. And so the next month we tried, and I got pregnant on the first try.
Ah, amazing. Amazing. That's so great. Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
glad that worked out. And that's your little one now.
And that's my little one who weirdly, hilariously looks like a carbon copy of our donor.
Really?
It's so funny. But it's like they're so their own person.
Of
And
course.
yeah, it's really sweet because then we get to know, they get to have a relationship. Like we hang
Mhm.
out maybe like once a season or three
Mhm.
times a year.
That's incredible.
Really gets to know everyone they come from.
Yeah, I love that. Ugh, That's so cool. Yay. So I wonder, yeah, I wanted to ask what were some challenges that you faced and what were some joyful or beautiful moments? So we've kind of talked about both, but is there anything more to say around either of those?
Yeah, I would say definitely all everything I named was the challenge.
Right, right.
And one of the most beautiful moments and something that I would offer somebody who might be going through a fertility roller coaster, let's be real,
Mhm. Yes.
is that I built an altar to my grief and I put the photo of our second donor on there who I was really like grieving around the loss of.
Yeah.
And and took like a month to really like tend to this altar of my grief. I made a physical altar and I would like
Wow.
sit in front of it and let myself grieve. And that felt like it really opened the way for our third and
Mm.
last donor to be the one.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful.
yeah. And also what's coming to mind is just that connection in Chinese medicine between our hearts and our wounds.
Yes, the Bao Mai.
Exactly, the Bao Mai.
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, the two, like tending both is so important in this
Mhm.
work.
Gosh, what a beautiful practice to build an altar to your grief or for your grief, and to allow yourself to really feel it and be with it and have a physical space to carve that out. And that feels so important and so healing. Like, I'm just thinking of certain scenarios for myself. I'm thinking, I feel like a lot of times I wasn't able to grieve certain things. And I think that stopped me from moving forward. So it's like, oftentimes, if I'm trying to move forward in a certain way and I'm getting stuck, I'll notice like, oh, there's some undealt with grief here that I need to address that will hopefully open up that portal, to continue, kind of moving forward. Was that kind of similar to what you experienced?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really that like, yeah, I think underlying all of this is holding the belief that to feel it is to heal it. And that
Right.
sometimes, right, like as we're able to, as we're ready to kind of move through the process.
Mhm.
And sometimes that can take a month, and sometimes that can take years, right? Or even a
Totally.
lifetime. And each body gets to take its own pace in that.
Totally. Yeah, it can be such a different timeline for everybody. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
for sure. And I'm wondering, do you have any other advice or encouragement or words of wisdom for queer, trans, or non binary listeners who may be currently trying to conceive, or may be soon, especially those who are by PGM?
Yeah, I guess first of all, I just want to offer that I see you and I see the just like real hurdles that we have in
Yeah.
this whole process. And I also see like how brave and radical and like beautiful it is for you to be you and to be like making family. And it's so, in this way, it's so, yeah, it's so beautiful. And I guess in terms of offering like advice, I feel like we hold so much on our own through this process that
Mhm.
to have somebody there, right? There's all the medical appointments and all the things to do in the supplements and practices, but to actually have somebody who can hold the space with you,
Mhm.
right? Who can really be with you in all of your experience feels really important, so you don't have to do the holding by yourself.
Totally. Totally. And it doesn't have to be a partner. It can be
Yeah. Could be
anybody.
practitioner, it could be your community, it could be a close group of friends.
Mhm.
Yeah, that you aren't alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
You deserve to be held.
Yes. You deserve to be held. Yeah. I love that. Ugh, beautiful. Um, I'm thinking, let's see, I think I skipped a question and I wonder if you have anything to say on what was your biggest surprise from becoming a parent?
Oh, yeah. My biggest surprise was actually how easy it is
Oh,
right now.
amazing. It's not what I
Yeah.
thought you were going to say.
Yeah, I know. That's why you're surprised. I'm surprised. I think I just like I had such a traumatic childhood that I was like,
Mm,
oh my gosh, like and saw my parents so stressed out and really thought like, wow, having children must be so unbelievably hard. It
right.
must be so hard to like, I don't know, be have to constantly be present for somebody else,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying it's not exhausting or
Sure.
that the I haven't slept through the night in 2 years. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard for
Yeah.
me. But the actual like being slowing down and being with my child and witnessing them and like taking joy and just being with them, that is like so easy. It's so easy to
Wow.
love them and
Yeah.
to like bask in them.
Right.
So I was really surprised by what yeah, what like a fun journey this would be.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Talk to me in like 10 years when we're
Yeah.
getting into adolescence, and I might have a different story, but right
Right now.
now, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's just really so special. And
Oh,
yeah, I love
I
it.
love that. That's so cool. I love that, and I think that, it really speaks to your ability also to be able to slow down and be in that moment and to be mindful. Like, I think for some folks that's really challenging, but it seems like that you really are like excel at that, or you're able to really yeah, just really embrace that presence in the moment and that slowness. And because I find that that was challenging for me, was slowing down so much, was just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm walking through molasses when I you know,
Like literally, it's walking with
literally.
like a toddler. You're like,
Yeah.
why are we walking through molasses right now?
Yeah, I'd be like, "Okay, let's, like, pick up the pace, let's do something else," you know? And I'm, like, not restless person necessarily, like, I can slow down and I can be still, but that was a whole 'nother level of slowing down and being still. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I feel like becoming a parent has brought me such a deep respect for children that I didn't have before out of my
Yes.
own wounding.
Yeah.
That like children are so close to nature and to
Mhm.
the Tao that they like really embody so much wisdom in that way for us, right? That's like
Totally.
so inherently anti-capitalist and
Yes.
anti-white they're
Yes.
just such like incredible teachers.
Totally. I think that's so true that kids are so inherently anti-capitalist because they don't even know that they're in that system yet, and they're like, I don't care that we have to be on time, like I want to try to put my own shoes on. Like,
Exactly.
and you're like,
Exactly.
but we had to be there 10 minutes ago and we don't have time for this, and it's like, what's time? Like, they don't care.
Totally. They're like, we're going to the doctor, walking down the street. This is going to be a 20-minute walk
Yeah.
down one block because I have to pick up every leaf.
Exactly, they have to commune with nature on the way. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, wow, the world, like in that way, like pandemic was really so childlike, right? In a sense of like
Totally.
really like slowing us down and bringing us back into a different kind of
Totally.
time zone.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's so true. Yeah. I love it. Okay, I'm glad I asked you that question. I wanted to circle back to that. I'm glad I did. And so, how can people find you and support you and buy all your things and work with you if that's an option?
Yeah, I think the first way that might be really exciting is to check out my collaboration, womb.school.com.
Yes.
Yeah, which I do with two other people who are so phenomenal and just, they're like, they're so wise and brilliant. And so we lead a 9 month um, training for practitioners in somatic womb work and
Oh,
space
cool.
holding.
Okay.
So if you are a practitioner, healer, really it's open to any kind of person who works with people
Mhm.
that that will be starting again in the springtime.
Okay.
And then if you're wanting to do some one-on-one or healing work together, I offer both one-on-one work virtually and in person, as well as group. I'm going to be starting up a new cycle of a group called Tending the Spirit. It's a group
Mm.
for BIPOC embodiment and emotional resiliency.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, weaving together the wisdom of Chinese medicine with trauma healing
Mm.
and that kind of Tao trauma work that I was naming,
Mhm.
so that we can, yeah, start to feel ourselves and also like really leverage the power of being in a group space and group process together.
Yeah.
So that will be coming in the new year.
Oh, nice.
And then one last piece, I have so many, I
Yeah.
have like so many different offerings, is that I
Yes.
once a year I also offer something for practitioners that is about tending to our businesses um, through an embodied, just yeah, like let's change shit by doing, but let's like really turn all these systems upside down and find a new way of doing
Yeah.
business together.
Yeah.
And that's called Sacred Fire. And that's
Ooh.
really fun. We take like flower essences together every month, and we meet for calls every month. And so
I love the little growl. Arr.
everything's on the website, and feel free to drop into my Instagram. It's at dr.jeevansingh. Um, and yeah, I just love to hear from people if you want to reach out and there's something that struck you about this conversation or that you have questions about, you are welcome to reach out.
Cool. And say the website. I don't think we actually heard the actual website.
Oh yeah, my website is jeevansingh.com.
Okay. Perfect. And I'll include that in the show notes as well for folks to access. Beautiful. And then I don't think I meant to check in at the beginning and ask where you're calling in from. You're in Portland?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm in Portland, Oregon,
Oregon.
the ancestral lands of the Chinook people.
Okay. Nice. So that would be for folks wondering where the one-on-one session would be. It would be in there in Portland, Oregon. Okay.
Yes,
Nice.
and I work in a predominantly queer trans-led clinic
Oh,
in
nice.
Portland, which is really sweet.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, that's great for folks to know. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I loved this conversation.
Me too. Thank you for having me, Josie. It was really, really lovely.
Oh, absolutely.